Hey guys, I just went ahead and fully completed Silent Hill 2 Remake. It took me about 17 hours and 10 minutes to play through my first time. And then I also did a New Game Plus run just to see, if you're going for all 8 endings, how long that would take you. And it took me about 4.5 hours to finish that. So you could probably cut even more time off of that as well. Shouldn't be too terrible if you want to get all the endings. But let me go ahead and give you my pros, my cons, and then my final verdict of the game. It should be prefaced first, though, that I have never played a Silent Hill game. So if you're looking for somebody to compare this to the original, I am not that guy. I'm going to give you just a completely fresh take on this, and I'm going to be comparing it to 2024, 2023 modern horror games. I'm not going to be viewing this through the lens of an old game because, in my opinion, if you are fully remaking a game like this, sure, you should stay true to the classic, but it should still be able to hold up with, other games in the genre that are coming out now. So anyway, let's get into it. The first pro is that visually this game looks great, and for the most part, it runs great as well. I played everything on high, no ray tracing, and I was at a constant 120 FPS. Now, this is the Bluebird team, and in case you don't know, they also make Layers of Fear. And in Layers of Fear, they've kind of trademarked that they love to do this thing where you're looking one way, and you're seeing something, and then you turn around, and everything that was behind you is completely different, right? And this type of real-time, super fast loading and level transitions and stuff are apparent in Silent Hill 2 Remake, and they can really tank the performance on a game like this that looks as good as this does. So do be wary of that if you're running on a weaker rig. I was seeing performance drops all the way down to like 50-something FPS from my normal 120 when I was in these like boss fight sections and stuff like that, where the level was constantly changing and warping as I was looking around. So that should be noted. But for the most part, the game looks great, especially the cutscenes, all of the facial rigging and motion capture and all of that looks insanely good. I really have no complaints. I know some people have some complaints about actual character designs from the remake or from the original to the remake. I haven't played the original. Can't comment on it. Everyone looks fine to me. I don't know. I didn't really have an issue with how anybody looked, to be entirely honest. The sound design in this game is phenomenal. It is genuinely some of the best I have ever seen in a video game. I've played well over 1,000 games. I play a lot more games than the average guy, and a lot of survival horror as well. And a huge part of audio is, especially when it comes to, a horror game, is just making the player feel unsettled. And this game just does such an A1 job. All of the ambient noises just have you on the edge of your seat. It's like nails on a chalkboard a lot of the time, hearing the little scutterings down an alley and the like screeches of monsters and stuff like that. And I have played almost no games with better audio design than Silent Hill 2 Remake. And it's even more impressive when you find out that apparently a lot of the audio in this game is just remastered from the original game. It just shows how ahead of the curve like Silent Hill was back in the day. It's really, really good. I would only be able to name like a handful of games like Hunt Showdown that I think have audio on par with this game. And in my opinion, I think, like, when it comes to horror, audio is almost more important than video, like visual feedback. And it does such a good job of setting the tone. It does such a fantastic job of painting the world and making you feel just like something is awry right out of the gate. The voice acting was also really solid in the game, and I enjoyed practically every single song in the soundtrack as well. So I think audio across the board here is like A1, some of the best I've ever seen in gaming. Really, really good. And I also think that the gameplay here, in terms of the level design and the puzzle design, is quite good. I never really felt like any of the puzzles were insanely difficult. I just played on the normal difficulty for the puzzles and everything. I never really felt like the puzzles were all that tough. And this game has a phenomenal map system. So the entire time you're walking around the levels, you're trying different doors and stuff like that. James is pulling out his map, he's pulling out a Sharpie, and he's going to town, baby. Oh, there's a locked door here. He's going to mark that on the map. Oh, there's a keypad here. He's going to mark that on the map. Oh, you progressed a little bit and you found the code for that keypad. He's going to write that code down next to the keypad on the map. And stuff like this is really important to have in a game with level structure design like this, because there's many times where you are in a level, like say you're in some apartment buildings and there is 3 floors of apartment buildings, or like of the apartment, and there are dozens of rooms in the apartment. And that can be very overwhelming for the player to try and navigate, you know, especially mentally as you're trying to build this map and you're like, okay, ah, man, I got these bolt cutters. Where the hell was that gate that I needed bolt cutters? You know, that could be very frustrating in a lot of survival horror games and like Metroidvanias and stuff like that. And so a good map system like this, where, you know, you never feel overwhelmed, even if there's tons of enemies, and even if, you know, you're running low on supplies, and even if the level is huge, you can take a breather for a moment and just be like, okay, I'm going to look at the map. All right, I'm here. I need to go down this hall, take a right. There's going to be a staircase. That's going to lead me up. That's where the gate is. Then I need the bolt cutters. And that just does a great job of adding flow and adding a sense of progression. So even when you're trying all these doors that are locked, you don't really feel bad about it, because you're like, okay, I'm marking the map though. And the map is, you know, updating so I can more efficiently navigate this playfield. And I think they do a great job there. In terms of the combat itself, it is entirely serviceable. It's not great. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It's not fantastic. It's kind of like a worse system of the Last of Us 2 melee. There's a dodge that you have, and you just click and you melee. The dodge is very, very generous, to the point where that makes the game, in my opinion, criminally easy. I felt that this game was super easy on the normal difficulty. I had, you know, a ridiculous amount of ammo. By the end of the game, I had like 120 pistol shots, 60 shotgun shots, and like 40 hunting rifle shots. On top of that, I had like 50 normal heals, 60 normal heals, and like 25 full heal syringes. I mean, it was just absurd. So definitely recommend playing on hard, but I don't think that's even going to fix the problem, because it's just very easy to not take damage in this game because of how easy it is to dodge everything. You know, this isn't like a Resident Evil 3 remake type of situation where the dodge is more akin to like a parry, where you have to like perfectly time it as you're getting hit. Nah, you just throw this thing out, man, when you think somebody's gonna attack, and you're fine. It's really easy. On top of that, you could just sprint to the side and dodge almost all attacks as well. Super duper easy combat, and I think just the general shooting and melee and everything, it's serviceable. You know, it's not good, it's not great, but I don't think it's bad. It's just serviceable. But let's get into the negative, shall we? My main negative is that this is a 6 to 8 hour game in the original, and they've turned it into a 16 to 18 hour game. And they've bloated a lot of stuff. I haven't even played the original, and I know they've bloated a lot of stuff here. And people that had played the original in my chat were like, wow, they have really stretched this out. Like, this is super bloated. You could there was one point where a guy in my chat was like, you could have beat the original game twice by now, if not 3 times, which is crazy, dude. And I don't really know why they decided to do this, because I think Glenn Schofield said it best, you know, the creator of Dead Space. He said that good horror is a lot like good comedy. If you tell the same joke over and over and over again for too long, or your joke is too long-winded, it's not going to be funny anymore. And that's the case with good horror as well. If you draw out a horror game, it starts to lose a lot of the scare factor, and it starts to become more annoying than anything. This is why most good survival horror games are only, 8 hours at the most, maybe 10 or 11. you know, because after a while, it just starts to get a little bit annoying. And this is compounded by the fact that this, because it's a remake of a very old game, this game does not have the mechanics that are present in most survival horror games nowadays because of Resident Evil 4, and it popularized a lot of those mechanics. So, for example, this game doesn't have like any type of currency where you're upgrading maybe your inventory, or you're upgrading your health or your stats or your weapons. It doesn't have any of that. And because of that, you are using the same pistol, you know, from hour 2 as you're using all the way in hour 16, 17 of the game. And, you know, you're engaging in with a lot of the same enemies for the entirety of the game as well. And so that can just really wear on you. And I ended up, you know, towards the end of the game, it felt a lot like Final Fantasy VII Remake, you know, where they took the Midgar section, which is like 2 hours long in the original, if that, and they stretch it into like 30 to 40 hours long, you know. And I was playing Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, wow, this entire chapter is the sewer section. The sewer section is like 2 minutes in the original, and they've stretched it out to like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it did not need to be that long. That's how I felt a lot of the time playing this game. And especially as you're pushing towards the end, I started to just feel like I was playing the game to finish the game instead of playing the game to enjoy the game. And that's not typically something I feel with games, but you know, it's something that is really hard for survival horror games. A lot of people had that issue with Resident Evil 7 as you got to the boat section of Resident Evil 7, and that's like the last hour and a half of the game. This is the last 6 to 7 hours of the game. So yeah, it's a little bit rough. I don't think that they needed to pad it out. You know, I understand that we're in a world now where a lot of people are like, I want $1 for every hour I spend in the game. And we're trying to push all of these long run times. But the truth of the matter is that us survival horror fans are fine with a shorter experience, because we're going to replay the game, especially a game like this that has 8 endings. You're going to be replaying the game. So it's totally fine to have an 8-10 hour experience, because it has that replay factor through New Game Plus, and a bunch of new stuff is unlocked in New Game Plus. I don't think they needed to pad it out this long, and I think the game does suffer from it, especially because, onto my next con, the the game does a type of narrative I'm not a fan of, which, you know, you are completely lost for like 16 hours and 55 minutes of playing this game, and then the last like 25 minutes is the explanation for what the fuck has been happening the entire game. And I am just not a real big fan of this type of narrative. I've never been a fan of it. To me, I kind of see it as like replay bait. It's like they're gonna keep you completely lost the entirety of the game until the very end where they explain it, and they do that so that way you want to replay it now that you have this new lens of actually understanding what the fuck was happening the entire game. And I'm just not a big fan of that type of narrative. You know, I think Evil Within did a very similar story, and I really never realized how much Evil Within takes from Silent Hill. It takes a ton from Silent Hill, but I think Evil Within kind of does a similar story and does it better, because you're able to, if you're reading all the lore and really analyzing all the situations and taking your time in Evil Within, you can go ahead and figure out the story ahead of time, at least the majority of the story ahead of time. And this game, I don't think it has that. You know, I took my time. I read all of the lore. I was lost the entire game. I had a couple theories, and every one of my theories ended up being wrong. And that's with me reading all of the lore, you know, being a pretty smart dude, and I still couldn't put it together. And then there were still even things after I beat the game where I was like, huh, okay, well, this doesn't, I don't really understand this. And they do add a bunch of new lore in New Game Plus, but I'm just not really a fan of like not knowing what the hell I'm playing for 16 hours and 50 minutes and then figuring out in the last 20 minutes what happened, and then it being like, oh, by the way, now play through on New Game Plus and just search all of the levels over again completely so you can try and find the new lore that will explain some of the stuff that you didn't understand. I'm just not a fan of that. Maybe some people are, but not a big fan of that type of narrative and that storytelling decision. But overall, I did enjoy my time with Silent Hill 2. It was really cool to finally play a game in this series where people have been, you know, glazing it for years upon years to me, and I've just unfortunately never really played any of them. It's been pretty cool to actually experience Silent Hill for the first time. It definitely has its issues. It's not a perfect game at all. While it may be visually super impressive and the audio may be next level A1, it does unfortunately suffer from feeling quite bloated and not having the greatest pacing. And then on top of that, the combat does start to get quite repetitive as you get further and further into the game. You know, by hour 13, 14, you're like, okay, let's wrap this up. And on top of that, some very lackluster boss design and the game feeling quite easy because of how generous the dodge is. And I would give this game a solid 7 out of 10. You know, for me, 5 is average, 6 is above average, 7 is good, and 8 is great. I don't think it quite hits that level of great. Maybe the original does. Maybe the original is significantly better. You know, I can't really comment on that. But while this game does do a lot great, it is unfortunately burdened and held down quite a lot by those cons. So for me, I enjoyed the game. I did go into New Game Plus, you know, I played it again, and I actually probably will go through and try and get more of the endings, because when you are skipping all the cutscenes and you know the puzzles and you're running through, it's a lot more enjoyable, even if the combat is still a bit lackluster. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you completely disagree? Do you love the game? I'd love to hear from you guys. I always love to, you know, get multiple opinions for games. I have a feeling that most people are probably going to disagree with me on this one and probably love this game. I know Silent Hill has a very dedicated fan base. If you like the review, then please leave a like on the video. And if you dislike the review, feel free to leave a dislike on the video. Subscribe if you'd like to see more reviews from a guy that's not a paid shill. I buy all the games just like you do, play them through just like you do, and just give my honest takes on it. No matter how much the internet may hate my honest takes, I'm just going to tell you guys how I honestly feel about a game. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see all of you in the next video or stream Maroney. Bye-bye.